Hey everyone, welcome to the HireMyVA Team and Business Building podcast, where we help you to reclaim your freedom through hiring and thriving with virtual assistants without breaking the bank. And that means without breaking your bank.
That's right.
I'm Dave Braun, and I'm here with my partner, co-host, friend, mentor, coach, Bud, Larry Broughton. Larry.
David, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing great.
Good.
I am so excited because we've got a special guest for this episode of our podcast.
We do. But before we do that, Dave, I love you, man. I am so glad you're in my life.
You.
I was thinking about this morning as I'm doing my gratitude journal about those folks who just make an absolute impact on my life. I'm glad you're my friend. I'm glad you're my business partner. And I'm looking forward to seeing you tonight. How's
that? Back at you, dude. I got my special. Do I dare say it?
No, don't say it.
Okay. Because, yeah, if people heard what I'm fixing tonight for dinner, oh man, I'd want to scream right through through this and come over and all that. We'd have a mad rush out of my house.
That's right.
And there's not enough food for everybody.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
we got a special guest. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. So his name is Navin Kulshreshtha.
Yep.
And I think I pronounced that right, but he's coming on here in a second. Now,
yeah.
Navin, you guys are going to enjoy the stuff he talks about.
Yeah,
he's a web designer and filmmaker from Orlando, Florida. That's where he's at.
Yep.
And he's run his own business for about 15 years. The name of his company is Devi Studios. And he's got a YouTube channel and he publishes a weekly tutorial. And one of the things that's awesome about he's got a couple thousand subscribers. And even though he didn't talk about this on the podcast, he's actually monetizing his channel right now.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
Yeah, it's hard to do that until you get 1,000 subscribers, but yes. But you got to start somewhere, right? I loved this conversation for a bunch of reasons. He was just dropping some value bombs like out of the gate,
Oh my gosh,
things like focus on results. When you're bringing team members on board, particularly VAs, right? The other thing is that I loved, and some of this is just, hey, TFTR, thanks for the reminder.
Yeah.
When you start looking at people who have had success in business, you can start connecting the dots. And another thing that he said is hire people who are better than you. One of the things that you and I talk about all the time is hire people who are bolder and better than you, bolder and brighter than you are, right? Another thing I thought that was gold, we were talking about integrity. He said, it's easier to find people who are competent than it is to find people with integrity.
Yeah.
That's sad, but true.
It's
right?
sad and it is really true. It is.
Yeah. Listen, there are so many, but I guess the last one I would leave people with, but there are more than this.
Yeah.
And I want people to listen to this and just hear how he's describing these things, is that when you're hiring a VA, don't hire 15 people right out of the gate to take up every piece of responsibility and role and function that you're trying to provide in your business, but start small. Identify one aspect of your business. If you've never hired a VA before, start with that, learn the process from there, hone the skills, develop the systems, and then either expand that role or start adding VAs for other roles in your business. I thought that was gold.
Yeah. He's been very successful too with just using part-time VAs for everything.
Yeah.
He's not even using full-time yet, which is definitely what we recommend, but he's doing very well. And you can tell by the way he communicates and, how he values his team members, you know why he's successful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But we're just scratching the surface. So grab a pen, grab your paper, take notes on this one. But Dave, why don't we just dive into the interview?
All right, everybody. Here is our interview and talk and discussion with Navin. So Larry, you want to jump in and ask a couple of questions here?
We can get started here. Yeah. Hey, Navin, when did you start actually using the VAs though? I mean, you're in a space where you could have people in-house or people, outsource somewhere else. How long have you been using
that's actually one of the good things about web design is even in the early days, like in the beginning, I used to do everything myself.
Yeah.
And at the time, it was just like very small, simple, static websites,
Sure.
HTML, some graphics. So in the beginning, I handled everything myself. Then, of course, the whole web design field started to evolve, get more complicated, more complex. Once you get into the WordPress space, it's impossible to know everything. And so I do have, let's say, so probably after 5 years, I started bringing in other people. One of the main reasons is that I just didn't have the skill set. I couldn't do everything at a high level. And so of course I had my focus, which was more of like the front end web design. So HTML, CSS, some graphic design, but a lot of the back end stuff like the PHP development, the programming, the database stuff, those were some of the first people I brought in, like serious technical programmers, because it was just beyond me.
That's interesting that you're bringing, it sounds like you're bringing in people who had skill sets that were beyond yours in some areas. Is that right?
Yes.
Because what
Yes.
we hear with a lot of folks is that they're afraid to do that. Now, that's not just in the VA space, but so many leaders are afraid to bring on people who have experienced skill sets beyond them for fear of, well, part of it's ego, I think, but part of it's also that they don't know how to manage them. Was there ever a hurdle in your mind that you needed to get over to do that? Or what did that allowed you to say, hey, I don't have experience in this space, I'm going to bring somebody on who does?
Well, this is like an ongoing thing, because ideally, in my mind, to properly manage somebody, I should know everything that they're doing in their job and be able to look at their work and see everything that they're doing. But of course, I can look at their code all day long and I'm not going to understand everything that they've written. So I've stopped looking at it. Because I realize I'm not really going to be able to understand what they're doing. And so one of the ways around that is, of course, just focusing on results. I think that's really important.
Great tip.
Through like a testing process. So I am able to test, of course, the website, the functionality, the logic, the features of it. So I have to focus on that. And honestly, that's what the client is focused on too. The client is not going to be looking at their code at the end of the day. The client is going to make sure that it performs the business goals and that it is efficient. It doesn't slow down or bog down the website. And so I've had to let go of certain things. But then what I sometimes do is I'll bring in another expert, like another programmer, to look at each other's code. And that kind of keeps things in check. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I'm not an expert, but if I get one expert to do it, then another expert to review it, at least on occasion, that helps keeps things on track.
You know what's helped me a lot is if I do like all I would have to do is a design review, and like spend a half an hour or whatever and say, hey, just walk me through your code. Whether or not I understand it, the process of doing that, if they can explain it and go through it pretty decently, then it's like, okay, that gives me some pretty good confidence that they're doing, a good job. Right.
Yeah,
so
that can also be helpful, or even just meeting in terms of like, what is your approach? How are you going to tackle this solution or tackle this problem? And then go through the process on a high level without digging too deep. And then of course, on the back end, looking at the results and verifying that it's working.
Yeah. Awesome.
We've got some clients both in our HireMyVA program and in our Victory Mentoring and Coaching program who get to a point where they're absolutely frustrated. They're pulling their hair out. And even at that point, they're afraid to bring people on board. Then we've got other people who very quickly realize, hey, I need to bring somebody on board. And it seems like it's a rather smooth transition. Where did you fall on the continuum prior to that, hiring that first VA? Were you that person who was just like absolutely overwhelmed? You had people breathing down your throat. You were missing deadlines, or was it a rather systematic approach and just, hey, I'm going to hire a VA and we're going to see how this thing goes?
It's definitely a process. And I was like, right from the start, I realized the power of being able to hire people who are better than I am. Hiring a graphic designer who's a better designer than I am, and then hiring a developer who's a better developer than I am. So I always kind of subscribed to that philosophy. With me, it was more of a logistical thing. I really, even though I have a remote office and mainly a remote team, I do like working hands-on with people, being able to interact and collaborate in real time as opposed to being in different time zones. So my biggest issue is just being able to stay connected with the people in a way where I can actually track and feel like I'm making I'm making progress. So right from the start, I was hiring people, but now I'm actually getting to the point where I do have, you know, deadlines and a task list that I can never get through.
Yeah.
And I kind of have to reach another level with my hiring, you know.
How many VAs are you working with now?
I have about, let me see, I have about 5 right now.
Okay.
Yeah, 5.
What's that process look like, just managing 5 VAs who are all remote?
Well, what I like to do is I like to have a weekly check-in with
Okay.
each one of them. I find that helps a lot.
One-on-one.
Otherwise, it can be kind of a one-on-one. Yeah, yeah, one-on-one. And so that can help a lot. Some of them, actually 3 of them are based in the US, so that makes things a lot easier. And then 2 of the people are actually in India right now. And so that makes it a little bit more challenging because typically we can only meet for an hour or 2 first thing in the morning. But I still meet with them regularly. As far as communication goes, we typically use Skype or Zoom. And then in order to track, I've been using Trello. And then I've recently upgraded from Trello to another tool called ClickUp that helps us manage tasks and projects and keep them moving along. And then when I need to send feedback to people and we can't interact in real time, I find that short little Loom videos can be really, really helpful. So I'll just record. I used to like try to write things down and take screenshots, and I still do that, you know? So I still do screenshots and Looms, but writing took too long. I could just do like a little 2-minute video, 2.5-minute video, send it off to them, and they understand it a lot better than like written documentation. So it's definitely working. You know, I don't think the process is as efficient. If all 5 of us were in the same space at the same time, I think it would be more productive and efficient. But with all of the virtual tools, it definitely works, you know?
Yeah, well, there's certainly trade-offs for sure. One of the things I love about doing Loom videos is that all of a sudden now it's memorialized, right? And that Loom video can be used for whoever the specific VA or team member was that you had created it for, but for the next one or for an additional one who's on board.
Yeah, it can be used as then like company documentation.
That's right. Yeah.
And then in between like the fixed meetings, we meet as needed, you know, and so it is possible for me to meet if we're in the middle of a project or a deadline. It is possible for us to meet every single day, and sometimes we do that. We'll meet for like 30 minutes, an hour every single day, and then I find that we can make pretty rapid progress on a specific project. So I like at least having that option of being able to meet in real time at least once a day if necessary, but typically it's once or twice a week.
Hey, how did you have to find or attract these VAs? You said you got some in the US, some are in India. What was that hiring process like for you?
I've used several websites over the years. And so back in several years ago, there was a website called Elance. You may have heard of that one before. And then I think several companies merged and created a company now called Upwork. And so I have essentially posted on Upwork, and I like to you know, create like kind of a detailed job description. Of course, you can always look at people's reviews, and that always helps, reviews and portfolios. Then an interview process where I actually sit face to face with somebody. Then typically giving them a small project to build trust and just to see how, because there are people who sometimes do really good interviews, but you know, maybe they're not the best workers, and of course vice versa too. You know?
That's true.
And so of course it's an imperfect process. And so like a small project to build trust, and then a slightly larger project, and then a larger project, and then hopefully a long-term productive relationship.
Yeah, we love that approach. We recommend that highly as well. Start with a small project first, get to know each other. Because also, you know, they may interview well, they may have absolutely the skills that you're looking for, but you guys might not like each other. There's a communication style or whatever it is that just doesn't work. Right? The chemistry, right. That's a good way to put it.
And honestly, one thing that I do is I don't even spend much time in the interview. I can usually tell within 15 minutes If there's like a connection, if I like the way they communicate, they talk, they present themselves, they can put a sentence together. And then I like to skip just into the small project. I'm like, hey, listen, I think this could work out. I'm going to give you a small project. And we'll meet again at the end of the week. And I find that that small project, and then in communicating with them in that small project, is far more valuable than the interview where, you know, we're just talking.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Now don't you have a combination of people that are working for you full time as well as like contractors?
No, right now
well?
I just have part-time people, but I am
Just
thinking
part-time.
about I'm getting to the point now, like maybe this year, where I'd be able to bring on like a full-time VA.
Okay, and how have you found working with folks part time versus potentially full time or just as a contractor? How would you contrast the pluses and minuses of those three areas?
Well, when you have part-time people, I think it can be a little bit scattered because you don't really know what else they have going on. And so they could get like a big project all of a sudden and be unavailable for 5 days, a week,
Big project from somebody else.
From somebody else,
yeah.
right? From somebody else. So I'm not really I'm not aware of their schedule, and so it's kind of a hit and miss approach.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, I just got this big project. Do you have time? And then she'll be like, no, I don't have time for 2 weeks. I was like, okay, well, now what do I do?
Yeah. It's like subcontractors when you're building a house, right? And it's a hot construction market. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Dave, you know about that when you're doing your renovation.
Oh,
sure.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Or, you know, I live in Florida, so after a hurricane, you can't get a roofer to come out to your house.
There you go. Right.
You know, you're lucky if you can find a tarp at Home Depot until you can get an actual contractor. So it's kind of it's the same idea. So I find it to be a little bit scattershot. So what I like to do is at least have a consistent relationship with my part-time people and let them know I'll be able to give you somewhere between 5 and 10 hours every week. And then I try to stick to that.
Okay, so you kind of guarantee some hours for them, so to speak.
Yeah, so that way it's consistent every week. And so that way I don't disappear for a month or 2 months or 3 months and then just show up and expect them to, you know, do a bunch of work immediately. We kind of have this established rhythm, you could say.
Do you find any of those folks that are part-time, do they kind of prefer staying part-time, or are they like just working a couple of part-time gigs because that's what they do, but they'd really like that full-time?
You know, the people that I work with, they prefer the part-time because they do have other clients. And so they themselves like to have the freedom of being able to choose and have other projects going on. But it is possible that if I ever offered them like a stable full-time position, that they would be open to that, you know?
Yeah.
They would probably be open to that if I was able to give them a good enough offer.
Would you kind of test the waters in that for some of your part-time folks? Because you're thinking about going full-time, right? With, you know, some of
It's possible. Yeah, I might. You know, if I decided to go full-time with somebody, they would have to fulfill like the roles of 2 or 3 people right now, you know?
I see.
And so that can get a little bit tricky, you know, because I also do like video production and digital marketing. So one of my contractors is a video editor, and I specifically have him doing video editing, while another one is like a content writer for blogs and social media. While another person is like more of a technical WordPress web development person. But if I could find one person who could do all of those well, then of course it'd be good for both of us, you know?
Yeah, that's true. So you're kind of looking at hiring for not as much time, so to speak. You're looking at hiring for roles in your business, right? So you have the different roles and you're like, well, I need 5 hours here or 10 hours here or whatever, right? And then as your business grows, then you'll elevate some of those folks to more of a full-time.
Sure. And then what I'm thinking right now is that if I could combine the web content with the web development type position, that would be kind of a natural fit. So that way they could just take all of the website stuff, you know, and that could probably be the first full-time role that I offer at my company.
Yeah.
Navin, do you have team members, we call them team members, employees, who are actually in person with you besides your VAs, or is your entire workforce virtual?
Right now it's all virtual, but a
Okay.
few years ago, I actually moved to Orlando about 5 years ago. Before that, I lived in Seattle. So
Yeah.
in Seattle, I had in-person, like part-time team members
Yeah.
who would come into the office, and we would work, and we had a fixed schedule.
Yeah.
They were still part-time, but it was like 3 days a week,
Yeah.
you know,
Okay.
Yeah.
in the office, in person.
What we have found over the years with the VAs that we hire and some of our clients is that we encourage folks to try as much as possible to treat their virtual assistants, their VAs, as if they're actually real life team members, right? That you share the same core values, right? That they know your vision and mission. Have you found that to be important? Have you even tried it? Or have you said, hey, they're a VA, they're a VA? I mean, that works for some people as well.
I think it's actually a very good way to do things, is
Okay.
to just see them as an extended part of your team,
Yeah.
your vision, they're essential members. I haven't gotten so far as, you know, the values and the mission and stuff like that, but I think it could help a lot in the alignment of things. I think in terms of the tools that we use and the type of work that we do and our standards of quality, there's definitely a kind of a consistency across the entire company. But I do like the process of creating like a brand vision and values, and I'm actually going through the process of that.
I like that. I also like your idea is that, hey, you're expecting the same standards from somebody in India or a virtual person in Wyoming, or wherever your VAs are, as if it's somebody who's actually in your office. I think it's a classic mistake that some employers have, is that they have a lower expectation for someone who's working virtually. At least it's done, kind of thing. And I would just encourage folks, you know, you got to maintain standards, because anything, there used to be a commercial, a car commercial, as I remember correctly, where they said quality is job one. What was that, Ford?
That was
They would
Ford,
show
yeah.
people walking through, and they'd sign the tire, or they'd sign the fender that they specifically worked on. Like, I'm proud of this fender that I worked on, right? I think that's kind of the approach that we need to take with any piece of work that we do. You know, whether it's somebody's creating a PDF or they're writing some code for you, right?
I agree. I think like taking pride in your work is like a really important value. And it's great when it's kind of shared across an entire organization.
Yeah. Well, listen, VAs can certainly, they're a lot of help for people, but if you don't manage them appropriately, they can undermine your success as well. We got to remember to remind folks.
They can be a drain for sure.
It's true, because I mean, if you have to micromanage somebody and give them too detailed instructions, or go back and look at their work 3 or 4 times, you might as well just do it yourself, or find somebody that you can just trust and hand things off to. So there's lots of challenges too. And I've been through many people before I kind of arrived at some of the long-term people that I'm working on. I've been through many, many people that didn't work out and created headaches. Such
a great point. You used one of the key words that we like to kind of glom onto really quickly, is that trust issue, right? It's encouraging to hear that, you know, you didn't hire one person and they've been with you forever because it was sunshine, lollipops, and rainbows right out of the gate, right? We oftentimes are going to have some misfires, hire the wrong people, learn from it. But are there specific things you do besides the initial doing small projects and a little bit larger project to build trust with your VAs?
Well, yeah, I mean, I do like to observe people. Sometimes it's hard to manage people when they're remote. You don't know exactly what they're doing and how much time they're spending on tasks and, you know, things like that. And so something I always look out for would be integrity and consistency. That's really important, not just competence. You know, it's actually easier to find people with competence than it is to find people with integrity.
Oh, that's such a great reminder.
Great point. Yeah, that is really important.
And so competence is just you know, a baseline, but I mean, it does take time to figure out, is this somebody, you know, who has integrity, who takes pride in their work?
Yeah.
And it can only be determined over time by observing them, watching to see if their words and actions are consistent, if they deliver on the promises, even if it's like a small promise, like I'll email that to you by the end of today, you know. But if I get it 2 days later, or if I have to remind them the following day, that's like a little issue, you know, but little issues are often a sign of larger issues to come.
Right. One of the things I have to remind folks, like I have a hotel company as well, Navin, I have to remind supervisors and managers in my organization, I think it's from Proverbs, is like, it's hard for me to trust you with big things if I can't trust you with the small things. So if you're going to miss this deadline, that's just with me, how do I know that you're not missing deadlines with clients? Which brings up the question that we get pretty regularly, a few times a month. Do you allow, or just not even allow, do your VAs communicate directly with your clients, or are you the buffer between them? Is everything funneled through you?
No, a couple of them do. So my web content person, and I specifically hire them knowing that they will interact directly with clients. Most of my team members do not. But when I specifically hire a person, then it's a different process of what I'm looking for. You know, they have to have a very good telephone manner. They have to have a very good Zoom manner or video conference. Their emails have to be very courteous and professional and to the point, and they just have to reflect kind of the brand of my company. And communication is very important, you know, for client satisfaction. Doesn't matter how competent you are if you're not able to communicate properly. And so there are a couple of positions that are client facing. And so then not only do I look for the competence and the integrity, but they have to have just very good, polished, professional communication skills. And then I feel more comfortable with them emailing clients directly for content, images, calling them up, and, you know, staying in touch with clients and just getting things done.
Yeah, I think during the whole hiring process, this is one of the times where we can kind of figure some of this stuff out, right? I remember several years ago looking for a VA, and we were doing, it might have been Skype. I don't even know that Zoom was around at that point, but there were two different experiences when we were going through the hiring process. One is the person looked like a slob, just the way they sat. They leaned back and they were just, you know, it's like they didn't even care. You know, like when you go to an interview, typically face to face, you know, your hair is done, you're wearing something that's nice, you know, you're prepared, right? This person like literally looked like they had just gotten up and like they could care less. Great resume. And the other one was the background was a mess. Dirty laundry in the back, animals running around. I mean, and I had to think, well, gosh, because these people were going to be client facing, and I had to think, all right, if this is the best they got now, right? How are they going to represent me and my company well moving forward? And so I want to encourage viewers and listeners to this, that we're not just hiring for competence. We're not just hiring for integrity. You're also hiring for, like, these people are going to be a representation of who you are. All of this stuff comes into the picture during the hiring process.
Definitely. And it's hard to find people that you can just trust implicitly and who can act, and that you don't even have to, you know, of course you have to have minimal supervision, but you just trust that everything is going smoothly with them.
I'm glad that you said that, because I can think of Dave, one client in particular who's frustrated that they've tried to hire a couple of people and they're not perfect. So number one, there are no perfect VAs out there. But number two, it's hard to find them. So when you do find them, you need to do what you can to hang on to them, which means you might have to pay a little bit more. You treat them a little better, because I'm glad to hear that. Well, like I wish it were easier, right? I wish that everybody we hired were, but it is rare to find someone who's kind of close to a complete package, right?
It is, yeah. And then, like you said, that once you do find that person, and if they click and if they connect, then you do whatever you can to retain them.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things that I love about our course and community is, you know, especially our courses, we've got, you know, a lot of ways to shortcut to get through, I don't know how to say, you know, the riffraff, to kind of make sure that the people that, you know, you talk to, before you even talk to them, you've got a really good idea of their written skills, how they're going to present themselves in video, all of that kind of stuff, right? Assuming that's what you want. So
absolutely.
But nothing ever is perfect. And you don't know them really until you start working with them. You can shortcut a lot of it, but you can't do all of it, right?
No. And anyone who's client facing, a lot of those soft skills become important. Spelling, grammar, punctuation in their emails, their emails professional, all the little things that we didn't think were important, but actually they are.
Yeah. And I think there's a balance also of how much you can teach versus how much is, innate, internal with them, right? Like I know Larry talks a lot about, and we have this in our course about, motivation, integrity, and capacity, right? The motivation to want to improve, right? And, the capacity to improve. And some folks will be able to make the adjustments and some won't.
Yeah.
And so it's important, I think, as we are bringing people on our team, to know the difference.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
And you've been doing this for a long time, and you probably have a pretty good idea. You can get a pretty good idea pretty quick, right? If these are the right folks for you.
I pretty much can. I normally schedule the initial interview for like 30 minutes, but usually within 15 minutes, I'm ready to either go on to the small task or get off the call.
So that,
you kind of build up a set.
Let me ask you that question. I mean, I've had that before too. It's like, and sometimes it's not even, it's like 5 minutes. It's like, hey, introduce myself, talk to you, ask the first question, is their answer is basically yes or no. And I'm like, no.
How do you asking open-ended questions?
Yeah. When you ask open-ended questions and they just say yes or no kind of thing. Still, I mean, how do you, I don't have a good answer to this. How do you get off of a half an hour call without feeling like you don't want them to think that you're rude? How do you exit sooner rather than later?
The good thing is that even if it does go to like 20 minutes or 25 minutes, that's okay. But typically at the end, I'll ask like some short questions. And then I'll basically say, okay, thank you for your time. And I will let you know. And so it's just kind of a very, I try not to be too abrupt, but just like a nice, soft, professional ending, and then get off the call.
Yeah.
Dave, can I answer that question?
Yeah, go for it, Larry.
I've had this happen before.
Yeah.
I bring it up with them. This is like a getting to know you process. So if you ask 2 or 3 of these open-ended questions to give you a yes or no, then I would just say, hey, I've tried to ask you some open-ended questions, and really I'm just getting a yes or no. Do you find interviews difficult to do? Tell me about that. Go on the journey. I think a mistake that a lot of folks get when they're interviewing people is that they have these set interview questions that they have to hit, and when they aren't checking the box, they don't know what to do. We're just trying to get to know somebody, right? Yeah. And the questions that we have is like pre-programmed. Okay, I think this is the path it's going to go. But I have no problem with calling people out. One of the questions I asked years ago, I used to have when I'm hiring general managers and above in our organization, I have this process where I go, it's like, hey, we're hiring you to be our vice president of operations. You've worked with rock star vice presidents of operations in the past, and you've worked with some real bad ones probably. Give me what you think are the top 10 qualities, characteristics, or skill sets for a rock star director of operations. What do you think the top 10 are? And we write them down. And then I have them rank themselves on a 1 to 10 from it, right? And I always give the caveat. A 10 is you have 0 peers. You are the absolute best in the industry, right? That's a 10. A number 1 is I don't even know what that word means. So I'm kind of guiding them a little bit, right? So if they give themselves a 10, they better be a 10. Well, this guy gave himself a 10 on everything. And I pushed him on it. I kept saying, really, if I walked out there right now, I couldn't find one person who's better than you on this. And that whole conversation, just how he took feedback and how he took a little bit of pushing, really opened up my eyes to this person, right? So interviews are not just meant to be these rote questions, but really to get information from them. How do they respond to critiques or criticism? Right? Yeah. Better to find out in the interview process than the first time when they're dealing with a client.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. And sometimes people are nervous, when they come into the situation, they're nervous, they're intimidated. And so we should, at least give them a chance. At least ask them 3 times, the information that you're trying to get.
Great point. Ask them
Yeah.
3 times. Yeah. And try to get them to relax. Yeah.
Yeah. That's one of the things we have in our interview guidelines. It's like, first thing is like, all right, everybody take a deep breath, and this is going to be fun.
Yeah.
Or, or we're going to try to have some fun. Like you said, Larry, just a
Right.
conversation, just put
Yeah.
both of you at ease, because it's,
Right.
especially, because a lot of our clients that we use, it's going to be their first time in hiring a virtual assistant.
Yeah.
Right. So when they get on an interview, and I remember this myself, getting on an interview the first time is like, I'm as nervous as they are, because it's like, this is weird.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times the first 5 minutes, I don't ask any tough questions, just
Smart.
simple, try to keep it lighthearted. And interviewing is also a skill,
Absolutely.
You're trying to assess somebody, like how they actually are in a short period of time. And that does require both of you to be kind of relaxed and comfortable.
Yeah.
Do
you have a tidbit of advice for someone who has never had a VA before, but they are considering it? Or
I would say start
many
small.
nuggets?
It can be, start small. So maybe take one aspect of your business that is causing you headaches that you would most like to outsource. Maybe it's something like bookkeeping, If, a small business person is kind of trying to keep up with their own books, and they're kind of getting lost in the tedium of the reconciliation and this and that, maybe take one aspect of your business and then find a person, maybe a part-time person, who can do that, and then work on your systems and your processes to assign and track and verify the work. And then once you're comfortable with that, you could either increase that person's workload or find another aspect of your business that you think you can possibly outsource.
Yeah. Very
so
cool.
I would recommend that for anyone trying out a new venture, is just starting small and then refining and practicing, working on your skills, and then growing from there.
Yeah, I like that. Start small, start with one aspect of your business. Yeah, because if you've never managed remotely before, and all of a sudden you come in and you hire 15 people who are going to take over every piece of your business.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gonna have some problems.
It can be a little bit overwhelming. And a lot of this is having the proper systems in place, and it'll take some tweaking and refining and experimentation before you're fully happy with the full process.
What's the longest longest tenured VA that you've got right now?
Let's see, I've been working with one person for probably at least 8 years now.
Wow.
Awesome.
Yeah, 8 or 9 years.
And what do you do to what we call thrive? What do you do you get somebody on board? Do you have specific systems, tasks, anything that help people once they're in the organization to grow with you, or to ensure the longevity? Would be great, boy, if we'd have people that were around us for 8 or 10 years.
Well, I think part of it is just respecting them as professionals, not like really treating them as, let's say, employees or underlings, but more like partners, So they're partners. I want them to succeed. And of course, my success is tied into their success. And so part of that is compensation, making sure that they're fairly compensated for their work. And that if, project goes over time, I pay them more. Or if, our estimates were off and that, it took double the work or triple the work, I make sure that they're fairly compensated for their work, And then another part of it is giving them the necessary resources, whether it's training. Sometimes I'll sit down with somebody and train them. And so there are like a lot of things that you can do aside from compensation to make people really enjoy working with you and wanting to continue working with you. So I think, seeing them as partners as opposed to, let's say contractors or workers, just seeing them as business partners.
Yeah.
Kind of shifts the mentality.
Yeah. Over the years, I've realized that I don't think people put enough emphasis on our desires to become better at what we do. And so given that, then there aren't enough business owners who value training their team members enough. Everyone wants to go home at night and feel like I'm a better professional today than I was yesterday.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dave. Thanks, Navin, for training me on this so that I can become better. That's just not valued enough, I don't think.
I agree. So professional development and giving them a space where they can actually grow and develop as professionals. Flexibility. And, when you have part-time, VAs, it's kind of given that there is a certain amount of flexibility.
Yeah.
And, they appreciate the flexibility of not being bound to things. And so if they have, like one of my VAs right now is moving, she's moving from one state to another and she's pulling her hair out and very stressed out.
Yeah.
So I said, don't worry about it. There's nothing urgent. I can take care of the stuff that's going on here. So I know that she'll need a week or two to get settled.
Yeah.
And I said, don't worry about it. Just get back in touch once you're settled. And so she appreciates little things like that.
Yeah.
I respect their time. She said she had a previous boss that used to text her constantly after hours on weekends and then demand work in an unreasonable manner.
Yeah.
So, demanding work to be done immediately when it's not really that urgent, demanding after hours work, weekend work when it's not actually required. And so I don't do that. I like people to take their weekends off, go spend time with your family.
Yeah.
And so respecting their time and their boundaries,
Yeah, this kind of goes back to the interview process. That's one of the questions I like to ask candidates as well, is tell me about a boss or a supervisor or someone you've worked for in the past where there was problems, where it just didn't work out, where you wished it could have gone better. Tell me, I don't need to know the person's name. I don't need to know what role it was in, but tell me about that experience. Tell me about someone you've worked with that's been great and you love it. What happened there? Because then we're getting the nuggets of information that we need, right? Because if I am that person who I micromanage and, I'm calling it at all hours and I'm just not going to change, then I know this is not the person for me. I hope
that's a
people
good
don't
question to
micromanage.
ask people. You know, they're good experiences or bad experiences.
Yeah. And encourage honesty, by the way.
Yeah. And so that has been kind of, that's worked very well. And then also just respecting their skills and their talents and, kind of appreciating what they bring to the table.
Yeah. It's funny, just the verbal acknowledgement, hey, we couldn't do as an organization what we do without you. Thank you for the talent that you're bringing. Dave is really good with that, with his team. So I totally agree. People need the words of encouragement, right?
They do.
Cheerleading helps is what I say. Cheerleading helps.
People like having an impact, it's about more than compensation. It's about development and also having an impact on the company, but then also on clients. People like it when their work makes a difference in other people's lives. It's actually fulfilling.
So good.
When we do surveys and get client feedback, both the goods and the bads, we always celebrate and we always, use that as a team not to improve, but also because we do a good job. We always look at that and it really is encouraging because, my team, they know exactly how much of an impact that they do make on the clients. And they do know that.
And I know, Dave, that you're overall a very positive and uplifting person. And so that also helps when people are working in an environment that's positive and uplifting. It makes a world of difference than when you're in a toxic, negative environment every day. Doesn't matter how much money you're making. If you're in a toxic environment, it brings you down.
Oh, yeah.
For sure.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, Navin, do you have any questions or any other thoughts for us? Because we should probably bring this to a close, but it's been awesome. Do you have any other thoughts or anything for us? And then ask us the last question or two, and then we'll let you give yourself a plug.
I do. So I know that, one of the things that you guys specialize in is finding, VAs from the Philippines, part-time or full-time.
Yeah.
And so let's say you wanted to have like a daily meeting with someone in the Philippines, and then your work schedule doesn't really correlate with their work schedule. Because I know, Dave, that I think you might even have like daily meetings with some of your VAs. So how does that work in terms of the time zone?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So the way we normally do that is we establish from the get-go. So when we hire somebody, we say, hey, I need a minimum overlap time a day, if that's what you want, if that's the way you want, right? So we establish it from the get-go. You got to work from, like, right now, this is daylight savings time. So like I usually say 2 p.m. to 5 p.m., that's one option. And so 2 p.m. our time is 5 a.m. their time. The other option would be 8 a.m. our time to 11 a.m. our time, which is, I don't know, 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. Right. So it ends up being what their option is, what they would want to do. So you establish that up front and saying, hey, I need a minimum overlap. Now you
Set the
could,
expectations.
yeah, you could, Navin, say, I just need an overlap for 2 days a week. You know, it kind of depends. So we have actually recently switched. We're doing our overlap from 2 to 5 every day. And we were doing daily meetings. We aren't at this point. I think we're probably going to go, we may do that again. Certain things that you do like that, they can kind of wear off in their effectiveness. They can become a little bit of a burden. It's like, oh my gosh, we're meeting today again and again. I think, you know, Larry, you can chime in on this, but I think from my experience, a lot of times it's good to have a daily meeting if you've got some really important project to do, unless, you know, you're all just working the same time anyway, and then you all get together and communicate during that time.
And so right now you're not doing the daily meetings. Your time would be 2 p.m. to 5 p.m., which would be 5 a.m. to 8 a.m. in the Philippines, but not every day.
Yeah, and I could reinstitute that, but it was getting to be to where I maybe it was probably my problem in running it, because I let them go on too long, and we would start, you know, delving into problems and solving them, as opposed to saying, do your stuff and then come back on and solve them, you know, or talk to me later if you need some help.
Okay.
Right.
And so I guess on their end, they just have to accept that they'll be getting up early, you know, on those days.
Well, some people like that.
Yeah.
Some people might, you know, they may have another gig, right? Or they may have family obligations. So I think during the interview process, or even when you're doing the job posting, you say, this is what we're looking for. You know, like we got a VA who likes to work at night.
Right.
Work the overnight shift.
Yeah. Or they like to work at night, or, you know, at least you tell them that, you know, I need this amount of overlap, you know, and, you know, and it does help. And even though you don't meet every day, if you have that overlap and you know that's there, you know that, okay, now I can go in my project management, I can go text them, not text them, but Slack them or whatever, and we can get on a quick call and resolve some stuff.
Okay.
The other thing too, it's such a balance, Navin. There's times when, like right now, we've shifted a little bit, and Daff, you know, she used to work at night, but now she's starting at 2 p.m. Brian is now starting at about 11 a.m. my time. And what I'm finding kind of refreshing on that is I've got that morning time where they're not bugging me for anything.
Yeah, I like to keep my mornings free, because
You know
that's
what
when
I
I kind of
mean?
like do my own deep work.
Yeah, because,
Well, I think
yeah. Go ahead, Larry.
We're building these businesses to create freedom for ourselves.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think we need to set the VAs up, how we hire them, how we communicate with them, on what's going to work best for us. Because as business owners, some of us are better morning people or evening people or whatever it is, but you got to do a little bit of analysis on yourself, stare at your navel a little bit and say, okay, what's going to work best for me? And then go out and hire people. The great thing is there are a billion people out there who are potential candidates when you start looking around the world, right? To fill these positions.
And it's hard to really know yourself, what you like, until you go into the process and start working with a VA or two. And even then you find that, I need to switch things up a little bit, you know, for yourself. So, I mean, it's a constant adjustment, at least for those of us who like to feel like we are productive, you know, constantly and playing at the top of our game all the time.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's this constant adjustment.
Yep.
Okay.
Did that answer your question at all?
It does. I think, first of all, you need to have self-knowledge, understand what works for you. be upfront about it, and then find somebody who matches that criteria.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess it gets tricky if later on you need to change things up, then hopefully it works for them as well.
Yeah.
You know?
Right. And the other thing you have to be aware of is that, you know, if they have to get up at 5 a.m. and they are not morning people, you won't be getting the best of them when they are overlapping with you. So your daily meetings or whatever would end up being, it just might be like a review. You're not going to solve any tough problems or anything during that time. Yeah.
Right. And then maybe it's not a daily. Maybe you're like, well, we need to meet at least once a week at this time, or maybe we need to meet 2 or 3 times a week, you know?
Yeah.
That's a little bit more tolerable.
Yeah. You could do like a Monday and Thursday or something like that and try it out.
Yeah.
See what works best for you. Like Larry said, see what works best for you, Navin.
Yeah. Well, thanks. That's actually very helpful.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate you coming on here and sharing your experience with us.
Great discussion.
Yeah,
hey, is there a way, someplace people can follow you online, website, if people would like your services? How can people follow you?
Yeah, my website is devistudios.com. So it's DEVI and then studios.com. So I do like web design, video production, digital marketing. And I have clients actually all over the country.
Great. Well, we'll put that in the show notes for sure. Any social media you want to plug? If not, then no big deal.
On YouTube, I am known as the Web Guru. So that's where, the Web Guru. So that's where I post my tutorial videos. So I'm almost up to 2,000 subscribers right now.
Nice. All right. Congratulations on that. That's good.
Yeah. So it's growing slowly and steadily.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. Appreciate your insight. You had some great nuggets in here, man.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, guys.
All right.
Anytime.
Awesome, Navin. Appreciate you being on.
All right.
Yeah. Take care. Bye.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. Remember, building a team is the way to reclaim your freedom, as Navin has done and is doing. Right. But we are here to help you guys. You know, this conversation was awesome. I hope you got some tidbits out of it. I know I did. But 3 things that we'd love for you to do, and we'd really appreciate it. Number 1, subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already done so. Number 2, give us a rating, preferably 5-star. And then number 3, go to HireMyVA.com for more information on our amazing course and community. Because remember, even without experience, you'll learn how to prepare for, hire, and thrive with virtual assistants. Larry and I have helped a lot of folks, and we'd love to help you too. So just go to HireMyVA.com for more information.
That's right. Hey, do yourself a favor. Do the world a favor. Go do something significant today, my friends. Make sure and get on there and join the community. Share your experiences. And with that, I'll just say this. God bless you. God keep you. God hold you. Now go do something significant today. Go get them.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye. See ya.